Inside the Robertsons' living room, Diana Robertson gave Samantha an ultimatum. She said Samantha could only see her father if she agreed to marry Anderson Tate, or pay $1.5 million. Samantha didn't speak right away. She looked at her stepmother and asked, "You want me to marry a man in a vegetative state just because you can't stand the thought of your own daughter doing it? And all this, just for money?" Diana didn't flinch. "If you won't choose, then I'll end your father's treatment," Diana said. "This family has little money left. I'd rather save it for my daughter's dowry than waste it on a dying man. I'm still his wife. So if you want to save him, do what I say. Marry Anderson." Samantha didn't reply. She turned around and left. Diana was not someone who made empty threats. Samantha knew she needed money fast, so she decided to call her boyfriend, Derek. He was Anderson's cousin and part of the Tate family. She thought he might help. But just as she dialed, she heard Derek's ringtone coming from a nearby bedroom. He had no reason to be in her house, let alone in her sister's room. Then she heard Vivian's voice say, "Derek, it's a call from my sister. Aren't you going to answer it?" "What for?" Derek replied. "She never let me touch her in 3 years. I bet she's got some sort of illness down there." Samantha froze, just outside the door. Derek continued, "My cousin is a vegetable and won't last long. When she marries him and becomes a widow, I'll play it sweet, so she'll hand over the Tate assets and then we'll enjoy everything." Samantha stood there in silence. Her boyfriend had been cheating on her, with her sister. She could still hear them laughing as she walked away with tears running down her face. The Tates were one of the richest families in the country. Anderson, the head of the family, had been in a vegetative state for 6 months after a car crash. The doctors said he wouldn't survive the year. His mother, Rosalie Tate, didn't want him to die unmarried, so she promised a large bride price to anyone willing to marry him. But no wealthy lady wanted to marry someone who was about to die. Around that same time, Samantha's father was hospitalized, and his company collapsed. They needed a lot of money. Diana found out about the marriage search and used Samantha's father's illness to pressure her into agreeing. Samantha had taken every insult and act of cruelty from Diana and Vivian, for her father's sake. She had believed every lie Derek ever told her. But now, she saw everything clearly. She finally decided to marry Anderson. 3 days later, the wedding took place. Samantha walked alone down the aisle. Her face was covered by a white veil, bouquet in hand. From that day forward, she became Mrs. Tate. That night, she was sent to Anderson's mansion in the heart of the city. It was worth more than $150 million. Before she could look around, Mrs. Obi led her to the master bedroom. She stepped inside and saw Anderson lying on the bed. She walked closer and looked at him quietly. If not for his condition, she knew she would have never become his wife. Before the accident, Anderson was the head of Zenith Group, one of the top companies in the country. People said he ran both legal and underground businesses, and punished anyone who crossed him. Samantha never thought she would end up married to someone like that. While she was still thinking, the door opened. Derek walked in. "I'm sorry I'm late. I was busy, but I came to see you," he said. Samantha looked at him. "I just married your cousin. Do I need to remind you how to speak to me?" "I know you're angry because I didn't run away with you," he said. "I just didn't want you to suffer. Once he's gone, I'll get you a good lawyer. You'll get his whole estate. Then everything will be ours." He grabbed her hand. "Let go," Samantha said sharply, and pulled her hand away. Derek was shocked. Samantha never spoke to him like that. He wondered if she had found out something, and stepped closer to explain. But Samantha didn't give him the chance. She looked him dead in the eye and said, "We're done. I'm Mrs. Tate now." Then she turned her back to him, ending it without another word. At 8 the next morning, Mrs. Obi took Samantha to the old mansion to visit Anderson's mother, Rosalie Tate. The entire Tate family was in the living room when Samantha arrived. She moved around quietly, greeting each person. Rosalie watched her with approval, thinking an obedient daughter-in-law would be easier to control. Once Samantha settled, Rosalie opened a gift box and handed it to her. She said the bracelet inside would suit her skin tone. Samantha did not hesitate. She accepted the gift and thanked her politely in front of the whole family. Rosalie told Samantha she understood that life wasn't easy for her now, since Anderson could not take care of her. But there was still a way she could benefit from it. She explained that Anderson had spent most of his life working and didn't even have a child. Samantha paused. She didn't like where the conversation was going. Rosalie said, "I'd like you to give Anderson a child. He should have an heir." Samantha was stunned. Everyone else was shocked too. Henry, Anderson's older brother, spoke up and said Anderson had been sick for a long time, and might be infertile. But Rosalie wasn't bothered. She explained that when Anderson first fell into a coma, she arranged for doctors to collect his sperm. With a fortune like his, there had to be an heir. She didn't care if it was a daughter. All eyes were on Samantha now. Rosalie asked if she was willing to have Anderson's child. She also said Samantha and the child would inherit everything Anderson owned in the future. The way everyone was already eyeing Anderson's property while he was still alive made her feel a bit sorry for him. But giving him a child would stop Derek from ever getting anything. And she was fine with that. Besides, if she refused, the Tates would only force her in the end. "I'll do it," Samantha said. When the conversation was over, she stepped out of the mansion and was about to leave, when Derek stopped her. She felt sick just seeing his face. He looked around to make sure no one was watching. "You're breaking my heart, Samantha," he said. "You never let me touch you all the years we dated. But now you're going to give Anderson a child." Samantha didn't look at him for long. Giving him a child means getting his estate. Why wouldn't I do it? Derek's expression changed. He stepped closer and lowered his voice. "You could just have my child instead and pretend it's Anderson's. It would still be a Tate. Even if my grandmother finds out, she won't say anything." Samantha looked disgusted. "It's good to be ambitious, Derek. But ambition without brains is dangerous." She turned and walked away. "I'm off. Your grandmother arranged for a doctor to pick me up at your cousin's place." After everything was settled at the hospital, Samantha went back to Anderson's mansion. That evening, she came out of the bathroom and sat by the bed. She took out the new face cream she had bought earlier in the day and started rubbing it. Suddenly, she paused. She thought she had heard a man's voice. So she looked up, only to see Anderson looking straight at her. She rushed downstairs and called for Mrs. Obi. She hadn't expected this. Mrs. Obi and the doctor hurried upstairs. Within half an hour, the mansion was crowded. No one had believed Anderson would ever recover. The doctor checked his condition while others stood around, stunned. He confirmed Anderson could now speak and said full recovery was possible with continued treatment. His mother collapsed from the shock and was rushed out of the room. Samantha remained at the doorway, unsure if she should go in. Anderson sat upright in bed. His eyes were cold and fixed on her. "Who is she?" he asked. Mrs. Obi bowed her head. "Master Anderson, she is the wife Madame Rosalie arranged for you while you were sick." Anderson looked at Samantha and said, "Get her out of here." Samantha was so shocked she took a few steps back. Mrs. Obi walked out of the room and closed the door behind her. She approached Samantha calmly and guided her to the guest room for the night, explaining that Anderson might need time to process everything. Samantha's mind was racing. She had prepared herself for the possibility that Anderson might die, but not once had she considered what would happen if he regained consciousness. The look he had given her earlier left no doubt. He was not going to accept her. She was sure of it. Despite their legal status as husband and wife, this was technically their first meeting. It was not surprising he reacted with hostility. The next morning, Mrs. Obi moved all of Samantha's belongings from the master bedroom to the guest room. She informed Samantha that it was time for breakfast and mentioned that Anderson was already in the dining room. Despite her reluctance, Samantha went to the dining room. She saw Anderson sitting quietly and felt uneasy as she took her seat at the table. Mrs. Obi set up a place for her. She glanced at him briefly, and that was enough to catch his attention. Anderson took a sip of his coffee, then said calmly, "I heard you might be pregnant with my child." Samantha froze. "Do you prefer surgical or medical abortion?" Samantha told him she got her period that morning, so she doubted she was pregnant. After that brief conversation, she rushed through the rest of her meal and stood to leave the room. Being under the same roof with him made her uncomfortable. "Get your documents ready," Anderson said. "We'll be divorced soon." She gave a slight nod and walked out of the dining room. Rosalie had been so shocked by Anderson's awakening that she had to be admitted to the hospital for hypertension. Anderson was waiting until her condition stabilized before finalizing the divorce. Samantha went to the hospital for a checkup. Her period had arrived late, and the amount of blood was unusually small. It was the first time something like that had happened to her. At the hospital, she explained her symptoms to the doctor. An ultrasound was arranged. About an hour later, she received the results. She was pregnant, with twins. Samantha kept the news to herself for a few days. She didn't know how to tell Anderson. He had already said they would get divorced, and he didn't care about the marriage. But now she was carrying his children. She had to tell him. Plus, she couldn't hide it for long, not when the symptoms would eventually show. That evening, she stood outside his study, unsure whether to knock. She was about to turn back when the door opened from inside. Anderson looked at her, clearly surprised, but didn't say anything. "I need to talk to you," she said. He stepped aside and let her in. She took the ultrasound photo out of her bag and placed it on the desk in front of him. "I'm pregnant," she said. "And it's twins." Anderson stared at the photo for a long moment, then sat down. His expression was unreadable. "I spoke to my mother earlier today," he said after a pause. "She wants this marriage to stay. So I'll do what she wants." He looked up at Samantha. "You can ask for anything you need, a doctor, nurse, whatever. But don't expect me to care about you or show you love." Samantha gave a small nod. She wasn't expecting anything from him anyway. In the days that followed, she kept to herself. Some mornings she could hardly eat. But she tried not to bother anyone. One day, while walking down the hallway, Samantha's legs felt weak. She tried to steady herself, but she missed a step and stumbled. As she leaned against the wall, she felt a sharp pain in her stomach. Then she noticed blood running down her leg. Anderson saw her from down the hallway. Without a second thought, he walked quickly toward her. He picked her up and rushed out of the house, calling for the driver. At the hospital, the doctors moved fast. Samantha was taken for checks. After a while, a nurse came out to give Anderson the update. The babies were fine. She just needed rest. Samantha's world had changed that day. Because after the incident, Anderson no longer treated her like a stranger. He became more gentle. At first, Samantha didn't know how to react. She didn't expect kindness from him, but he kept showing up. Each morning, he brought her breakfast. If she mentioned craving something, no matter how odd or hard to find, he would make sure she had it within the hour. Sometimes, they would sit by the window and talk for hours. He asked her about her childhood, her interests, her dreams, things no one had ever really cared to ask before. The more they talked, the more they opened up. One afternoon, she walked into his study with a worried look. He asked what was wrong, and she told him about her father. The hospital her stepmother sent him to was not known for good care, and she had no way to see him without Diana's permission. Anderson didn't say much that day, but the next morning, she got a message with a new hospital name and a keycard with her name on it. He had moved her father to a private hospital and paid for the best care. She now had full access. Meanwhile, Samantha's stepmother and sister found out that the money they used to receive from Mr. Robertson's account had stopped coming in. Furious, Diana tried to contact Samantha, but her calls went unanswered. They had forced Samantha to marry Anderson when he was in a coma because they all thought he wouldn't last long. They just wanted to squeeze money out of the Tate family. Now Samantha was still married to him, and instead of dying, Anderson had recovered. Derek, her ex-boyfriend, was furious. He thought Samantha would be an easy target, someone he could use to get close to the Tate fortune. But now she had broken things up and worse. She was living in luxury, married to a man who was not only alive but clearly taking care of her. That wasn't the plan. So together, they started plotting. If they couldn't get money through her, they would find another way to bring her down. In the days that followed, Samantha and Anderson grew even closer. They spent most of their time together, sharing quiet meals, taking walks in the garden, and watching movies in the evenings. The little routines became something they both looked forward to. One evening, while watching a movie she had chosen, Samantha glanced at Anderson. His usual serious expression made her curious. She wondered why he always looked so guarded. After a while, Anderson shared a part of his past with her. He told her how, years ago, the two people he trusted most, his best friend and his girlfriend at the time, had betrayed him. They had tried to ruin him, stealing from his accounts, leaking company files, and almost getting him jailed. The damage had nearly destroyed him. He lost most of his business shares and had to rebuild everything from the ground up. The betrayal had changed him. Since then, keeping his distance felt safer than trusting again. Samantha nodded slowly. She didn't say much after that. Instead, she leaned back, focused on the movie, and let the moment stay quiet. Anderson didn't speak again either, but his shoulders relaxed a little. From then on, they both knew something had changed between them. They were falling in love. But neither of them said it. The next day, Samantha told Anderson she wanted to go shopping for baby items with her friend. He offered to go with her, but she said she wanted a bit of time out, just to enjoy the day with her friend. Anderson agreed and reminded her to call him if she needed anything. Later that evening, Samantha was on her way home. Her friend had already been dropped off, and she was alone in the car. As she turned onto the main road, a large truck came out of nowhere and rammed into her vehicle. The crash was violent. Within minutes, she was rushed to the hospital. Anderson got the call and went straight there. The doctors told him they had to perform an emergency surgery to save both her and the babies. The babies were delivered early and placed in incubators. She survived the surgery but remained unconscious for days. Days later, Samantha slowly opened her eyes and the hospital ceiling came into view. Her body lay weak on the bed. Her hand moved toward her stomach and paused. Then she touched it. Her heart sank. But before the panic could rise, Anderson was there beside her, sitting at the edge of the bed. He looked like he hadn't moved in hours. She turned her head slowly and looked at him. "Are they okay?" she whispered, her voice barely there. "They're alive," he said. Samantha let out a shaky breath. Her hand rested back on her stomach. She looked at him again, and he didn't say anything, just sat close, watching her quietly like he couldn't look away. After a while, he spoke again. "You scared me." Samantha looked down, then turned her eyes back to him. "I didn't think I'd get to say this," she said. "When I saw the truck coming, I thought that was it. I thought I'd never wake up again." She paused, her throat tight. "I wanted to tell you then, but I couldn't. So I'll say it now, I love you." Anderson didn't respond at once. He leaned forward slowly, still watching her. "I love you too," he said, reaching for her hand as he pressed a gentle kiss on her forehead. They stayed that way for a long time. While she recovered, Anderson began an investigation. He wanted to know who was behind the crash. It didn't take long for him to trace the truck and find the driver. The man had been drunk, but there was more to the story. Anderson had him quietly taken and questioned. Under pressure, the driver confessed everything. He had been paid. A large sum of money had been transferred to his account from multiple sources: Diana Robertson, Samantha's stepmother; Vivian, her stepsister; and Derek, her ex-boyfriend. They had all planned it together. Anderson handed over the evidence to the authorities. The driver was jailed, and soon after, arrest warrants were issued for Diana, Vivian, and Derek. Months later, Samantha was fully recovered. The babies were healthy and ready to go home. Anderson carried them out of the hospital with Samantha by his side. He had once said he would never trust again, never love again. But now, he had a wife he loved, 2 children he adored, and a peace he never thought he'd find. And Samantha? She had found everything she thought she'd never have. A real family, a real home, and real love.